They built an entire subdivision on my land. 97 houses, a fancy clubhouse, tennis courts, the works. And I watched them do it for 2 whole years, never said a word, not a whisper. $67 million invested on dirt they never even owned. And the cherry on top? The woman who masterminded the whole thing stood up at a town meeting and called me trailer trash, said people like me shouldn't even dream of owning prime real estate. You ever hear something so arrogant it's almost funny? So there I was, watching cement trucks line up like a parade, diesel burning my nose, the crunch of gravel under my boots as I walked the property line my granddad staked back in '52. Folks, those developers had no idea they were building on a powder keg. They were busy playing house. I was quietly playing chess. And when I finally stood up in that courtroom and dropped my ace, my granddad's original deed, silence fell so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. I gotta ask, what would you do if you found 97 families living in dream homes built on land that's yours? Seriously, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. My name's Sage Hendricks. 3 years ago, I lost my wife, Sarah, to cancer. Left me alone on 240 acres of the best farmland you'll ever see, right here in Millbrook County. My grandfather bought this place in 1952, $800 and a handshake. I'm just a retired electrician, raising heritage chickens, black coffee, early mornings, the smell of hay drifting from the old barn. My kids moved out west, and honestly, I preferred my Buff Orpingtons to most people anyhow. Then along came Dolores Whitmore. Call me D, she said, stepping out of her white Escalade like she owned the world. Late 40s, bleach blonde hair yanked tight, clutching a clipboard like it was a loaded gun. She'd crashed in from some failed Arizona development. All talk about transforming rural communities and maximizing underutilized assets. The asset she wanted? My land. First time we met, I was fixing fence posts, her heels clicking up my driveway like a ticking bomb. Mr. Hendricks, this land's wasted on someone like you. She waved at my chickens. Think what we could build here. Executive homes, a real community. That little pause on someone like you said everything. I told her no, polite but firm. 6 months later, a city inspector shows up, claims he got anonymous complaints about my septic system. Suddenly, I'm looking at 12 grand in necessary upgrades. You want to guess whose Escalade was parked at City Hall? When I asked the inspector who complained, the man fidgeted like a school kid caught with stolen gum. But the real punch came a year later. I was out checking the fence on a chilly October morning, smelled the wood smoke, the dying leaves, when I spotted survey stakes, orange flags every 50 yards. Whitmore Heights, 97 executive homes. My heart just hammered in my ears. I drove straight to the courthouse, my old pickup rattling like a wasp nest, and demanded answers. Turned out, D had filed paperwork claiming my 200 acres were abandoned property, thanks to some buried county rule about annual land use declarations. The legal notices all went to the wrong address. Pure accident, I'm sure. Since I never replied to notices I never got, the county handed her development rights by default. Ethel, the county clerk who's been there since the building was brick, pulled me aside. Marcus, this stinks worse than a pig farm in August. But legally, she's got the rights. Development rights aren't ownership, I said. She just shook her head. That night, I sat across from Sarah's empty chair, coyotes yowling out past the pasture, and realized I had 2 options: fight in court and bleed out money for years, or get creative. See, folks forget, you can have permits, you can have development rights, but if you don't own the dirt, you're just building castles on quicksand. Dee had her fancy rights, but she never owned the ground itself. So I made a decision. Let Dee build every single house, every tennis court, every stupid little community amenity. Because the deeper she invested, the bigger her fall. 3 weeks later, construction started like a political rally. Dee organized a ribbon cutting with the mayor, county commissioners, local paper snapping pictures. She's in her power suit, scissors flashing, talking about prosperity in rural America. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, as they took chainsaws to the oaks my grandfather planted. Each crash of wood felt personal, but I kept my head. While Dee was mugging for the camera, I was out taking my own pictures. Every truck, every contractor, every piece of equipment. I started a spreadsheet tracking costs, concrete deliveries, everything. My old friend Jake, Another retired electrician had drilled that into me. Document everything, Sage. Memories fade, but spreadsheets win in court. Week 3, they'd bulldozed 40 acres, poured the first foundation. I walked that site every morning like a general surveying his battlefield, snapping photos on my battered digital camera. That's when I found something in the public records, a trick Sarah's cousin taught me. Always check the environmental assessments. Dee had skipped the proper review by claiming my land was already zoned residential. But it had special AG protections dating back to '62. She conveniently missed that. She filed a wetlands report saying no sensitive habitat, which was a joke because I'd watched blue herons nest in the marsh for 15 years. These birds were about to lose their home for a backyard pool. But here's where things get even juicier. I looked at her marketing materials. She was jacking home prices 40%, selling estate properties on pristine farmland, using my family's heritage to hike up prices while destroying that very heritage. My neighbors, folks who'd waved at me for decades, now avoided me. Even at Murphy's Diner, my usual breakfast spot, the waitress barely made eye contact. Dee wasn't just stealing my land. She was trying to erase me. Anonymous letters about rising taxes, more city inspectors, complaints about my barn, my chicken coop, my gravel drive. Then she hosts a community safety meeting. I'm not invited, but Jennifer Walsh, a retired teacher, fills me in. Didn't use your name, Sage, but we all knew who she meant. She talked about protecting property values from incompatible land use. Every instinct screamed to go confront her, but I remembered something Sarah used to say, anger is just intelligence leaving through your mouth. Instead, I called a property law attorney, not to hire him, just to learn. He explained, even if someone occupies your land for years, if you've got clear title, any improvements become yours. The law's on your side. The implications were wild. By month 6, the first model home was finished. I watched the Johnsons, a young family, excited as can be, sign their life savings over to Dee, trusting she actually owned what she was selling. That image kept me awake that night. Dee's success just made her greedy. In 3 months, she'd wrangled approval for 30 more homes, plus amenities to shame any country club. But she was digging her own grave. Her glossy brochures even featured my spring-fed pond as their private water feature. Jake Morrison, her construction foreman, became my accidental mole, just a good guy who didn't get the politics. Over burnt coffee at the gas station, he let things slip. She's leveraged everything, Sage, her house, her retirement, bank guys crawling all over the site. The HOA built before anyone even moved in. Rules banning livestock, no AG buildings within sight, mandatory $50,000 landscaping, was her way of squeezing me out. But here's where my electrician background finally paid off. I started noticing vandalism insurance claims, 3 separate incidents, shiny new equipment, nothing actually damaged. My brother-in-law once said, insurance fraud leaves a paper trail a mile wide. I started photographing every site before and after. The fraud was obvious. Meanwhile, families moved in, completely clueless they were living on stolen land. The Johnsons invited me to their barbecue. I found myself grilling burgers in a backyard that legally belonged to me. The sense of surrealism was thick as the smoke from the grill. But the real twist came when a county inspector tested my well and discovered it was supplying water to the entire development. Dee never secured separate water rights. She'd just assumed she could piggyback off my system. That was a bombshell. You can own land, but water rights are a different legal beast. And without them, you got nothing. As summer rolled in, Dee got nastier. Animal control complaints about my chickens, rumors about my mental health, flyers warning about the dangerous individual near your perfect community. One morning, the waitress at Murphy's Diner told me they couldn't serve me anymore. After 30 years, I was suddenly a pariah. But every petty act left a trail. Photos, emails, records, my evidence file got thicker, and I kept waiting, letting Dee get in deeper. By fall, she was Developer of the Year. 80 homes done, waiting lists for the rest, the local papers singing her praises. But her arrogance was making her sloppy. A dig through public records showed her brother-in-law sat on the county planning commission. 15 grand in campaign donations to commissioners. From my union days, I knew corruption always leaves breadcrumbs. I finally brought in Sarah Noel, a tough-as-nails property rights lawyer. She reviewed my mountain of evidence and said, Let her finish digging before we bury her. I had backup, too. Turns out the birds I documented were protected by state law. If needed, I could nuke the whole development for environmental violations. But the real explosion was brewing inside the HOA. Dee's dictatorship had sparked a rebellion. $500 fines for wrong roses, mandatory matching mailboxes, an endless stream of crazy rules. Jennifer Walsh led the resistance. I fed them info. Then I found out Dee was laundering money through fake vandalism claims, shell companies, inflated bills, funneling cash to herself. Now we were talking federal crimes. Construction deadlines loomed, interest rates rising, contractors gossiping about unpaid invoices. Insurance investigators started snooping. Her fraud on multiple properties triggered a state review. Desperate, Dee ordered 24-hour construction, burning through cash to get the community center up before her house of cards collapsed. But kids like Emma Johnson, who'd come visit my chickens after school, made it all sting a little. Families were living their lives on land that was always mine. I wrestled with whether justice was worth the collateral damage. But then Sarah Noel found Dee had done the same thing in Arizona and Florida. Ruined communities, bankrupt families. I realized if I didn't stop her, nobody would. Then came my ace. The original deed from 1952, hidden in a manila envelope Sarah had labeled property records. It included water rights, mineral rights, and a clause that said no subdivision without direct heir's written consent. It trumped every permit and county ruling, nullified Dee's entire scam. The title insurance company panicked, offered hush money. But when a land surveyor found part of the project was on Army Corps of Engineers wetland, federal jurisdiction blew the roof off. One call to regulators could shut it all down. Now, with Dee's world collapsing, the time came for the final blow, public, on her biggest stage. I gathered my team, Sarah Noel, Jennifer, Jake, Ethel from the clerk's office, and prepared for the groundbreaking ceremony. The media was hungry for blood. Dee was burning through her last cash on overtime construction, her private security stalking me everywhere I went, even stooping to intimidation and sabotage. 5 days before the ceremony, a whistleblower in the planning department handed over every crooked document, permits, bribes, emails about covering up violations. We had her cold. The Army Corps of Engineers ordered an immediate stop to all work. Bank loans defaulted, commissioners lawyering up, the state attorney general launching an investigation. On the big day, Dee pressed on, thinking pageantry could save her. 200 residents gathered, news cameras rolling, politicians making speeches about community vision. I stepped forward, deed in hand, backed by my legal team. This document proves I own every acre you're standing on. The crowd gasped. County officials looked like ghosts. Sarah Noel explained the legal bombshell for the cameras. Dee lost it, screaming about conspiracies, calling me unstable, her mask finally slipping. That's when the FBI agents and environmental investigators stepped in, served her papers right there on camera. Amanda Torres went live, and the story exploded across the country. Within a week, Dee faced 23 federal indictments. County officials resigned in disgrace, the HOA imploded, and the settlement paid me out $12.8 million. But the real victory? I made sure the homeowners could buy their land at cost. No one lost their savings. Environmental groups helped restore the marsh. The blue herons came back. Jennifer Walsh became HOA president, tossed every crazy rule in the trash. Dee went to federal prison, 4 years, plus millions in restitution. Her development career over forever. Our story changed laws, inspired property rights groups, and turned my late wife's name into a scholarship fund. And in the end, I even found love again, married Amanda, the reporter who believed in justice as much as I did. 5 years later, our community thrives, built on real trust, not lies. Sometimes the hardest fights choose you, but when you stand your ground, you help protect folks you'll never even meet. So tell me, if 97 families woke up on your land, what would you do? Drop your own HOA horror stories or thoughts about justice in the comments. I read every single one. And stick around, because next time, I'll tell you how a crooked mayor tried to steal a whole lake and the tiny fishing license that brought down a corruption ring. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure it never happens again.